Experience has shown that certain professions stand closer to the unknown than others. Soldiers, pilots, remote field researchers. But perhaps more than any other group, law enforcement regularly encounters the strange, the unexplainable, and the deeply unsettling. Across the world, police officers have reported events that defy logic, procedure, and even the limits of their training. Tonight's episode explores some of the most disturbing of those accounts. Stories from officers, dispatchers, and first responders, people trained to observe reality with cold precision, who instead found themselves confronting something far outside it. These are not rumors, not urban legends. These are accounts told quietly, privately, by those who stumbled into circumstances that left them questioning their own senses. This is the shadow world that law enforcement rarely speaks of. Welcome to the places where the thin blue line meets the unknown. Law enforcement lives in a world few civilians ever see. After midnight, the human world changes. Streets that feel familiar by day become hollow, echoing corridors of concrete and shadow. Schools, malls, industrial estates, riverbanks, places that are filled with life hours earlier, become silent and strange. To police officers, this is routine. Their shift begins just as the world goes quiet. They answer calls that no one else hears. They walk into places where fear gathers like dust. Abandoned factories, derelict houses, empty fields with no lights for miles. And it is precisely in these forgotten spaces, these gaps between society's routines, where the boundaries of the familiar can start to unravel. Officers are trained to be grounded, measured, unimpressed by superstition. They are taught to rely on fact, evidence, and the weight of procedure. But every officer who has worked enough night shifts knows the truth. The darkness plays by different rules. There are times when footsteps echo in empty rooms, when voices whisper through police radios, though no one is transmitting. When the world feels thinner, stretched, almost transparent. Some officers dismiss these moments as fatigue, stress, the tricks of a tired mind. Others, those who have seen too much, quietly admit that some calls stay with them forever. The next stories come from those officers. Chicago, 2003. Just after 1 a.m., emergency dispatcher Trudy Wakeland received a call that would haunt her for the rest of her career. A frightened teenage girl, 14-year-old Emily, whispered that she was home alone and could hear someone inside the house. She was hidden inside her bedroom closet. Trudy followed protocol, dispatching a unit to the address while keeping the girl calm. At first, the sounds in the background were faint. Distant creaks, something brushing against a wall. Then, gradually, the noises grew louder. Drawers opening, doors slamming, footsteps moving upstairs. Toward Emily's room, the dispatcher told the girl to stay silent. But the noises kept coming. Then came the moment Trudy still recalls with perfect clarity. The distinct sound of the bedroom door opening. Emily's breathing became sharp, trembled with terror. Emily, whispering, "He's in the room." A heavy thud, a brief, desperate scuffle. And then a high-pitched electronic distortion, so strange that audio technicians later said they had never heard anything like it before. And then, quiet. Emily spoke one final time, just 4 words. "His feet aren't touching the floor." After that, the call dissolved into sharp static, followed by a deep rushing sound, almost like wind, and the line went dead. Within minutes, officers arrived at the home. No signs of forced entry, no intruder, no blood, nothing stolen. The house was ransacked, but with no clear pattern. Drawers emptied, furniture overturned. The only trace of the girl was her phone, lying on the closet floor. still connected to the dispatch line. Emily was never found. Not that night, not ever. Trudy was instructed not to keep the recording. Officially, it was treated as an active investigation. Unofficially, the case quietly disappeared. To this day, no one has ever explained the sounds on that tape, or what Emily meant by those final words. Poland, New Year's Eve, 2022. A small village outside Bydgoszcz had long been wary of the abandoned farmhouse sitting at its edge decades earlier. Rumors of cannibalism and ritual murder had stained the property's history. But three young adults decided it would make the perfect place for a New Year's séance. What began as a joke spiraled quickly into something else. Their friend, Camilla, began behaving strangely. At first, she went quiet. Then she started to mutter, low growls rumbling beneath her breath. Minutes later, she was screaming, thrashing, hissing with an animalistic rage so intense that the two others fled the room and called for help. By the time police and paramedics arrived, Camilla was unrecognizable. A paramedic's short phone video shows her moving erratically, limbs snapping at odd angles, her voice a guttural, unnatural chorus. When officers approached, she lashed out with violent strength, knocking over furniture, throwing objects, and clawing at the air. It took multiple responders to restrain her. What happened next only deepened the mystery. Tests showed no drugs, no alcohol. Psych evaluations found no mental illness. Her closest friends insisted she was quiet, shy, and introverted, the last person on Earth who would stage an outburst or dramatic scene. Camilla remembers nothing. Not the growling, not the violence, not even entering the house. Official reports chalk it up to a psychotic episode of unknown origin. But one of the officers who witnessed it still insists, "I've seen people in crisis. I've seen people on drugs. What we saw that night wasn't any of those things." The farmhouse was sealed off again the next morning. Locals say it should never have been opened in the first place. Oakland, California, 2019. At 9:47 p.m., a 911 dispatcher received a call from a terrified 6-year-old boy. "There's a zombie outside our window." His twin sister could be heard crying in the background. Their mother had stepped out to the store just minutes earlier. Officer Shaw McCory, expecting a frightened child or a prank call, was dispatched. But as his cruiser turned into the quiet cul-de-sac, something staggered into the headlights. A man, bare-chested, covered in blood. His eyelids were gone, torn away, leaving two raw, gaping sockets. His fingertips were shredded down to the flesh. His walk was jerky, puppet-like. His head lulled from side to side when McCory spoke. The man turned toward the sound and emitted a guttural animal scream, more beast than human. He flailed violently before collapsing to his knees, muttering about voices, bright lights, and insects crawling inside his skull. Paramedics discovered he had gouged out his own eyes during a meth-induced psychosis. The boy who said there was a zombie wasn't wrong. Not every horror is supernatural. Some are tragically, brutally human. Pender County, North Carolina, July 31st, 2022. Route 210 is a lonely stretch of road cutting through thick forest and swampland. Near it lies Patriot's Watch, a Revolutionary War battlefield where hundreds died. The area has long been associated with ghostly sightings, bloody soldiers, pale figures shifting along the tree line, but nothing like what happened that night. At 2:15 a.m., an anonymous driver called 911. He had just seen a man on the roadside, blood-soaked, unmoving, staring blankly as the truck passed. But during the call, something changed. The man's voice suddenly cracked into panic. "That's not human." "There's something in the back of my truck." He turned on the cargo light. Something stood up. The figure, or creature, was pale, hairless, spindly, and standing upright in the bed of his truck. Its face looked stretched, featureless, like someone had pulled a sheet of white elastic across a skull. It pressed that blank face against the rear window, watching him. When it realized it was seen, it began pounding furiously on the roof. The man accelerated to 60 miles per hour. The figure held on. Finally, he slammed the brakes. The creature flew forward, landing in the headlights, an unnatural tangle of limbs, before scrambling into the trees at impossible speed. Deputies later examined the truck. They found dents, deep, violent ones, but no blood, no prints, no trace of anything living. The driver had no history of drug use, hallucinations, or mental illness. In interviews, he broke down multiple times, insisting, "I know what I saw. I don't want to ever see it again." To this day, nothing like it has ever been found. But locals say pale shapes still move along that stretch of forest. Across these stories, one truth becomes clear. Law enforcement officers live on the boundary between our world and whatever lies just beyond it. Some encounters can be explained. Drugs, stress, sleep deprivation, human tragedy. Others resist explanation entirely, and perhaps that's the point. In trying to force every unknown into a rational box, we miss something essential: that the unexplained still exists, still slips through the cracks, still brushes against the lives of those brave enough, or unlucky enough, to face the dark head-on. For most of us, the night is a place for rest. For officers, it's a place where the world grows thin. And when the world grows thin, logic isn't always the most convincing answer.